All right, everybody, welcome back to another deep dive. Today we're looking into something pretty wild.
Yeah,
This is some real, like, spy thriller stuff happening right now.
Yeah. It's definitely something you would see in a movie, Not
Exactly.
something you expect to see in the headlines.
We're looking at a CBS News article that just dropped today, and it is about Elon Musk
Mm-hmm.
and his security detail.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of crazy thing that's happening is that the US Marshals Service has deputized his private security detail.
Right, and that's...
That might not sound like a big deal, but it actually is a really, really big deal.
Yeah, it is. When you think about it, you're giving a private entity, uh, you know, what amounts to basically bodyguards,
Right.
law enforcement powers, which is not something that happens every day.
Right. Think about it, like the power to detain people, to potentially use force
Yeah.
to make arrests.
Yeah.
All of the discretion is private security for it.
Right, and I mean, it does beg the question of why, what prompted this? And the CBS article suggests that Musk has expressed concerns for his safety, even mentioning he's gotten death threats.
Right, and there's even this really kind of funny anecdote in the article about El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele,
Right.
Basically expressing concern for Musk's safety. And Musk himself even kind of joked, like, oh, maybe my security detail should be bigger.
Right.
It just seems like he is feeling vulnerable.
Yeah, it seems like despite, all of his wealth and all of his global influence, that there's a certain vulnerability there. And that vulnerability seems to be at the heart of this very unusual deputization.
But if he was really concerned for his safety, wouldn't he just get, like, Secret Service protection?
That's a good question. And the president does have the authority to grant Secret Service protection to anyone he deems at risk. And they protect all sorts of people, including a lot of high-profile people, including cabinet members like Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
So why this, like, weird detour, going through the US Marshals?
Yeah.
It just seems like taking the back alleys instead of just going down the main road.
Exactly. And to understand those questions, I think we need to understand a little bit more about the US Marshals Service and what they typically do.
Yeah, my understanding is that they're mainly focused on the judicial system.
That's right. They protect judges, federal prosecutors, court officials, anybody within the federal courthouses.
Okay.
Think of them as the guardians of the courtroom, making sure that justice can be served safely and without interference. The article even mentions Attorney General Pam Bondi as someone currently under their protection.
So we have this agency dedicated to protecting the judicial process.
Right.
And now they're suddenly deputizing a tech CEO's security detail.
Yeah.
It's like mixing oil and water.
Yeah, it's a very puzzling situation. And it's made even more perplexing when we consider Musk's past role as the head of DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency.
Not the meme cryptocurrency.
Right, not the meme cryptocurrency this time. A government department under President Trump.
Right.
And that department has a rather controversial history.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly.
Yeah, they were responsible for slashing thousands of federal jobs and even attempted to access some sensitive government data, which sparked quite a bit of pushback.
And there's this really interesting thing in the article, too, where the Secret Service even put out a statement basically reminding everyone that even with this deputization, private security can't be armed in certain government buildings.
Right. It's almost like they're trying to put a leash on these newfound powers before they even fully come into effect.
So why take the risk in the first place?
Yeah.
Like, what is the real story here? Is this about his personal safety, like he claims? Or is there something more at play here?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to get to an answer, I think we need to delve a little deeper into the potential motivations and implications of this unprecedented move.
Yeah.
What's really going on here?
So we've said that this whole thing with Musk's security detail is not exactly normal. But I think we need to, really take a second and think about what it really means, to give law enforcement powers to somebody who's not in law enforcement.
Yeah, that's a really important point because we're not just talking about, some extra muscle or a sharper pair of eyes. We're talking about giving somebody the ability to detain people, to maybe use force if they think they have to, and even arrest people.
Right.
These are some really big powers. And, traditionally we give them to people who have gone through, tons of training, a ton of vetting, and they're operating under really strict rules.
Yeah, and they have accountability.
Exactly.
Law enforcement is accountable to the public.
That's right.
There's a system in place to make sure that they don't abuse their power.
Exactly. Transparency, oversight. These are the really important parts of a fair system. But when you deputize, a private security force, it really muddies the waters in terms of who they answer to,
Right.
What mechanisms are in place to make sure that they don't go too far.
It's like giving somebody a loaded gun with no safety on it.
Yeah.
It's scary. It's like, are we basically saying that if you're rich enough, you can have your own personal police force?
That's a really scary thought. And it's something that, legal experts and civil liberties groups are already starting to worry about.
Yeah. And this article doesn't exactly give us any answers,
No, it doesn't.
It asks a lot more questions than it answers.
It really highlights the need for, some transparency and some clear guidelines.
Right.
If we're going to give private security these kinds of powers, we can't just, hope for the best.
Right.
We need some strong regulations. We need some really good oversight, and we need to know exactly where their authority begins and ends.
It's like trying to build a house without a blueprint. You might end up with something that looks pretty good on the outside, but it'll fall apart as soon as something goes wrong.
And that leads us back to that question of, what's the motivation here? And the article suggests that maybe this has something to do with Musk's role in DOGE and the access he had to sensitive government data.
You're talking about when DOGE tried to get all that confidential information.
Exactly. Maybe there are still some concerns about the security of that data or, the people who handled it. Maybe this deputization is supposed to address those concerns.
But if that's what's happening, why wouldn't they get an agency that actually knows about data security?
Right.
Why involve the marshals who are supposed to protect courthouses?
That's a good point. And it really underscores the lack of transparency here.
Right.
We're left to try and figure this out on our own, speculate about their motivations and what this means.
It's like trying to do a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Exactly. And all of these missing details just make people more anxious. What's the real agenda?
Right.
Is this really about protecting information, or is there something else going on?
Right.
Is this a one-time thing, or is this a change in how power works in our society?
It's like we're looking at the tip of the iceberg,
Right.
We can see this weird deputization thing, but what's going on underneath?
Exactly.
What does it mean for our justice system, for our democracy?
Yeah.
For how our society works?
These are questions that we can't ignore.
Right.
This is bigger than just Elon Musk and his bodyguards.
It's like throwing a rock in a pond. The ripples go everywhere.
Exactly.
And in this case, those ripples could really change the balance of power in our society.
This is unsettling. It really is. This whole situation with his security detail, it just feels like we're getting a glimpse into some future where money, power, and justice are all completely messed up.
Yeah, it's definitely a wake-up call. We think about these dystopian futures in science fiction books.
Right.
Where you have all this unchecked power.
Right.
But here we are.
It's like that saying, money talks.
But in this case, it feels like money is rewriting all the rules.
Yeah, and that's the problem. If we let people with money play by a different set of rules, have a different level of security and legal protection, then what does that say about, our commitment to equality and justice?
It's like there's this VIP lane for the elite, and everyone else is stuck in traffic.
Exactly.
Dealing with a system that seems totally rigged against them.
And it's not just about Elon Musk. This is just one example of a much bigger trend. We're seeing more and more privatization of security.
Right. So it's not just bodyguards anymore.
Right.
It's private companies that could have the power to investigate crimes, to gather intelligence, to actually enforce the law.
Right. All outside the usual systems of, accountability and oversight.
So where do we go from here? What can we do to make sure this doesn't become the new normal?
Well, first of all, we need to stay informed.
Right.
This story is still developing. It's really important to follow the news. Keep up with the legal challenges and understand what everybody's saying.
Right.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And it's not enough to just read about it. We need to speak up.
Right.
Talk to our elected officials, write letters to the editor, talk about it online and in person. Let's make it clear that this matters, that we're paying attention, and that we want transparency and accountability.
Right. We need to hold them accountable.
Exactly. And don't underestimate what we can do when we all work together. I mean, history is full of examples of, regular people coming together and forcing those in power to listen, to make changes, to actually protect everyone, not just the wealthy and powerful.
This isn't about picking sides.
Yeah.
This is about protecting the basic ideas of justice and equality.
Exactly.
Making sure that everyone, no matter how rich or powerful they are, has to follow the same rules.
Everyone's subject to the same laws,
You get
the
that?
same standards of accountability.
It feels like we're at a turning point. The choices that we make now will shape the future.
Yeah, we have to choose wisely.
So as we finish up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this one thought. We have the power to shape the future.
That's right.
It's not the elite. It's not corporations. It's us, the people. Don't be afraid to use it.